If you're a podcast host, listen up, this one's for you. My name is Allie Jackson. I'm the host of Finding Mr. Height, a dating and relationship podcast that I've been doing for 4 years now, sharing my positive and practical approach to dating that's built on my own life experience. And I wanted to share another experience that I've had, my secret behind monetizing my show. It's called Red Circle, and I was just telling my colleague about how much I love their platform. With Red Circle, not only am I getting a seamless hosting experience, but I also love the support I receive in ad sales. It's not just typical ad sales either. It's targeted opportunities based on my show and my life. And the platform is super simple. You just set your preferences and Red Circle matches you with sponsors that align with your show. You can vet every opportunity and their platform gives you great analytics. More recently too, my Red Circle team has brought me opportunities outside of my podcast on social media to really augment the podcast partnerships, bring them full circle. I just can't recommend them enough. If you want to give it a try, go to redcircle.com to get your free trial. That's redcircle.com for a free trial.
Hello, listeners. Welcome to Stars of the Golden Age, a show that highlights the lives of legends from film, music, and the birth of television during Hollywood's Golden Age, with a special emphasis on their lives behind the scenes. I am your host, Erin Carlson. Today, we will be talking about Thelma Todd, her life, her image, her tragic death, and the legacy she left behind. Actually, I really hate to do this to you so soon, but this will actually be a two-part story. I know we just had one with Theda Bara's story, but trust me, it is necessary. I really like to keep these stories buttoned up in one tidy little package, and I know most people prefer that as well. But sometimes it's just too much to condense into one episode. And I just simply don't have enough hours in a week to edit a 1.5 or 2 hour episode. So we'll be breaking the story into 2 parts. I don't know what I was thinking that I could do it in one. So today, I will tell you about Thelma Todd's childhood, her dreams, her early tragedies, and her film career. Then next week, I will talk about Thelma's chapter as a restaurateur, her personal life during that time, her untimely death, and the circumstances and theories surrounding it. There is just too much I want to tell you, and I don't want to skimp on anything. So thank you for enduring another two-parter with me. Now, let's dive into the life of the ice cream blonde, Hot Toddy herself, Thelma Todd. Thelma Alice Todd was born on July 29, 1906, in Lawrence, Massachusetts, to parents John and Alice. Thelma was the second child for the couple. Her brother William had been born almost exactly 3 years earlier. Thelma's father John had immigrated to the United States from Ireland with his family in 1883. Her mother Alice came from Canada 2 years later. The two met in late 1899 and were married in June of 1900. John worked at a carpet store where he specialized in reupholstering furniture and renovating carpets and rugs. John and Alice were very much in love, and their love definitely spilled down onto their 2 children. They were happy and financially comfortable, so by all accounts, it sounds like Thelma had a really good early childhood. For a few years at least. She was said to be an adorable, happy, and fun-loving little girl. She was also said to be very healthy. Whenever an illness would be spreading around the neighborhood or school children, Thelma always seemed to be spared. She never spoke much about her childhood during her later life in Hollywood, though, and that is likely because of an unimaginable tragedy that occurred when she was just 4 years old. It was the summer of 1910, and Thelma's mother Alice had taken the 2 children on a trip to visit family in Vermont. Thelma's older brother, William, developed a fascination with the machinery used at a local creamery. He loved to watch the intricacy of the machinery at work. He was mesmerized by it. The day before they were to head back home to Massachusetts, on one last visit to the creamery before they had to leave, William watched the machinery in amazement. This time, unlike his other visits, there were no workers in sight to make sure that he observed at a safe distance. William got too close. The little boy's coat got caught in the running machinery, and it quickly pulled him in. I will spare you the details, but it was absolutely horrific. He didn't survive. There was no way he could have. He had turned 7 years old just 1 month earlier. This horrible tragedy left the once happy family broken and in utter despair. It's impossible to ever be the same after experiencing something like that. What makes it even worse was the fact that Thelma, who had just turned 4 years old, was present when her brother was killed. She saw the whole thing. She witnessed something so unbelievably gruesome happen to her very best friend. And being so young, it would have been an incredibly difficult thing for her to process. As an early childhood educator, I can tell you that today this would be handled with extreme care. She would be closely monitored, she would receive specialized therapy, and her parents and caregivers would be trained on how to best guide her through the trauma. She would be encouraged to talk about it at her own pace, to work her way through her emotions. But it was 1910, and I don't think any of that occurred. Emotions were just kind of bottled up for the most part back then. 4 years old is, in my professional opinion, the most important age of a person's entire life. The mind and spirit are very impressionable at 4 years old, and every single experience and interaction a child has is crucial in molding them into the person that they will become. Every single one. That developing brain is working like mad in a 4-year-old's head. So when a child experiences trauma of any kind, it is important to support that child very carefully to keep that wiring of the brain on a positive track, to make sure their emotional and mental development is protected. I just can't help but think of my students, the little angels I spend my days with, and I can't even begin to imagine any of them experiencing a horror like this. It is absolutely heartbreaking. Thelma's parents were understandably in a deep despair themselves. How could they best support their surviving child, the child who had actually witnessed this horrific accident, when they were suffering so deeply themselves? Worse yet, Thelma overheard her father crying on more than one occasion while crying out, "Why did it have to be him?" Of course, he probably didn't mean this in a way that he wished the tragedy on another child. He just missed his son. He was trying to process it himself. But to a 4-year-old mind, hearing this could easily be taken as John wishing it had happened to his other child, to Thelma. And that's how Thelma processed it. She thought her father had wished it had been her that was killed, and that William was still there. So she decided to become William. She was going to be just like him so she could make her parents happy. She started wearing his clothes. She abandoned her baby dolls to instead play in the mud or climb trees. She started riding her brother's bicycle, racing the neighborhood boys. A few years down the road, she joined the baseball team. As a teenager, she even entered a car race at the county fair with one of her male friends. Just once, though, because when her parents found out, they were irate and forbade her from ever doing anything like that ever again. Although she dressed more boyish and was one of the boys with play and exploration, Thelma wasn't about to say goodbye to her long, beautiful golden curls. She was a beautiful and charming girl, with a fun and charming personality that was just as beautiful as its exterior. So, naturally, all of those little boys she grew up riding bikes and making mud pies with developed huge crushes on her as they grew into adolescence. Thelma had it all. The beauty, the personality, the confidence, the adventure. Just a beautiful spirit. That spirit was, of course, dimmed greatly by the grief of losing her brother, but she guarded and masked that hole in her soul very well. Thelma didn't let those boys through that shell. She protected her soul. She was happy having those boys as friends and nothing more. Thelma was a model student throughout school. She got good grades and excelled in her mini classes and extracurriculars: dance, piano, choir, and public speaking. She was in the school social club and on the school newspaper. She wrote a gossip column for the paper. I just love that they had a gossip column in their high school newspaper. And she was, of course, involved in the drama club. Thelma was a natural on the stage and had parts in several school plays, and even one or two in community theater during her high school years. During her free time as a teenager, Thelma loved going to the cinema. She was a teen at the height of the silent film era. She would have been 17 years old in 1923. Top films from that year were The 10 Commandments, The Gold Diggers, The Hunchback of Notre Dame, The Covered Wagon, and Adam's Rib. Although Thelma loved going to the movies, the thought hadn't even crossed her mind to be in the movies. In fact, she was quite opposed to the lifestyles of many of the hottest movie stars of the time. She was a pretty modest young woman and didn't approve of some of the details of the most salacious scandals of the day, like the details behind the deaths of Virginia Rapp and William Desmond Taylor. She was interested in living a calmer life, a life grounded in good values. What did Thelma aspire to do with her future then, if it wasn't acting? Well, she didn't really want to be a housewife or a teacher like most of the young women of her day. Teenage Thelma set her sights on a career as an attorney or an engineer. She was an extremely confident young woman, and she knew she could achieve whatever future she wanted for herself. Her life would take a different path, though, as we all know. While sipping on a soda at the neighborhood drugstore the fall after graduating from high school in 1923, Thelma was noticed and approached by a couple who was organizing a fashion show at a local theater, Mr. and Mrs. Fredericks. They wanted her for their show. Thelma was intrigued by this offer, and after getting permission from her parents, agreed to be the lead girl in their fashion review. For her work, she received $20 in gold, a new pair of shoes, and a 3-month membership to the theater in which the review was held. 6 months later, the following spring, she appeared in another fashion show, the Fur Fashion Review of 1924. This event was included as part of a vaudeville show, including dancers, comedians, and acrobats. And then after the show, a new movie was presented on the screen. A full night of entertainment. Thelma's next venture in show business was with a small local film production company, Aurora Films, which was operated by 2 brothers. It was time to hit the silver screen after all. They cast Thelma in small roles in their films The Life of St. Genevieve and Tangled Hearts. Although Thelma had set her sights on a professional life, a life as a lawyer or engineer, she was kinda loving this show business life. She held down a couple of regular jobs during this time too. She worked both at the local drugstore and as a salesgirl in a department store. This job at the department store apparently ended when she was fired due to mobs of young men who would come into the store to drool over the stunning blonde Thelma and not spend a single cent on any merchandise. Losing this job and her father's dislike of her participation in show business steered Thelma to school to become a teacher about a year after graduating from high school. Her father really wanted her to settle down into something sensible and secure. He wanted her to follow a more typical path for a young 1920s woman. At the end of her studies, she was a student teacher for 6 to 8-year-olds in English and history. Here's what she had to say about the experience and the anticipation for her future career. Quote, "They are the most interesting, Boys and girls at that age are just beginning to mold their characters. So much can be done for them with the right sort of influence and inspiration." End quote. With that kind of attitude, I think Thelma Todd would have made a wonderful teacher. And a fun one. Outside of the classroom, Thelma both joined a hockey team and entered the Miss Lawrence, Massachusetts beauty contest. A combination of activities that I doubt she shared with many other young women of the 1920s. She won the beauty contest and was crowned Miss Lawrence on June 1st, 1925. The Miss Massachusetts pageant took place 2 weeks later, and the crown was placed upon the head of Miss Thelma Todd. Thelma Todd was Miss Massachusetts. She was really proud of her wins, but she said, quote, "Beauty alone cannot achieve victories. It has to be backed up by a certain amount of intelligence and a tremendous amount of real hard work." End quote. Meanwhile, Paramount Famous Players Lasky Film Studio, we'll just call it Paramount, was looking for 20 promising new fresh faces to train in their newly formed acting school, the Paramount School, with the goal of turning them into stars for their pictures. Thelma wasn't interested, but a friend at the Empire Theater in Lawrence decided for her that she needed to have an application and photo submitted for consideration. 30,000 applications came in, and only 20 were invited to the studio. Thelma Todd was one of them. Studio head Jesse Lasky was impressed with the young beauty, and he immediately signed her under contract and got her busy in the studio's training program, the Paramount School. This wasn't the path Thelma had chosen for her life at all. All of this was happening because of the interference of someone else. But she was excited to see where this path could lead her. Her father was very disappointed in this change of plans, that his daughter was putting aside her plans to be a teacher. But 19-year-old Thelma and her mother left for New York anyways. This was the great turning point of her life. At the Paramount School, Thelma and her classmates of aspiring actors were thrust into courses on improv, costuming, makeup, etiquette, dancing, and of course, different acting techniques. Future husband of Mary Pickford, Buddy Rogers, was one of Thelma's classmates. Thelma differed greatly from the rest of the class in the fact that she didn't necessarily want to be there. She could take it or leave it. This was a once-in-a-lifetime chance for the other 19 students, but Thelma didn't take her studies very seriously at all. In fact, she made a big joke out of it most of the time, which sometimes made her classmates quite annoyed, and other times made them laugh hysterically. Maybe it was this looseness and coolness that made her one of the program's best students. The Paramount School final exam, per se, was a movie in which all of the students would appear together. There were 16 students left by this point. 4 had either dropped out or been kicked out. The movie was called Fascinating Youth in 1926. The studio even threw in a few seasoned famous stars, Clara Bow, Richard Dix, and Chester Conklin. This was, of course, very exciting for the students. At the end of the program, each student was presented with a diploma and a 1-year film contract with Paramount. Although Thelma's father wasn't the biggest supporter of his daughter being an actress, he supported her enough to make the big move to New York City, where she would be making movies under her new contract. Unfortunately, John Todd suffered a massive heart attack very shortly after arriving in the city. He didn't survive it. Thelma was on the road with her Paramount School crew promoting their film when she received a telegram with the devastating news. It was her birthday. Thelma's father died on her 20th birthday. Once through the worst of the shock and devastation surrounding her father's death, and herself requiring an emergency appendectomy shortly after, Thelma began appearing in more small parts on screen. Her first leading role was in Rubber Heels, released in early 1927, alongside Chester Conklin and Ed Wynn. Studio execs saw a star in Thelma Todd, and they were ready to send her from their East Coast studio to Hollywood. Thelma Todd, accompanied by her mother, arrived in Hollywood on April 17, 1927. "I felt a freedom I had never known before," she recalled of her new surroundings and the invigorating promise of her future. That initial excitement faded quickly, though, when Thelma realized settling into Hollywood society would not be an easy task. She felt isolated and shunned by the already established Hollywood elite. She'd get through it, though. She was tough. Just a month after arriving in Hollywood, Thelma Todd was working alongside Gary Cooper and William Powell in the Western film Nevada. It didn't make her an overnight star, but it was a step in the right direction for sure. She had also decided to make this move to Hollywood as an opportunity to revamp her image. Long self-described as a tomboy, Thelma decided she was going to step into a life of glamour and make her presence known at film premieres and social events around town. She was going to put herself out there, really promote herself. Unfortunately, she also had to endure what many, many other young actresses had to endure as they rose the ranks in Hollywood: the casting couch. Thelma Todd refused to trade sex for film roles, and she was informed by angry execs more than once that she would never again work in Hollywood as a result. She sure proved them wrong. Thelma Todd actually spilled some stories of the casting couch to Photoplay magazine a few years down the road. And guess who happens to have a whole collection of old Photoplay magazines? I found the article in the February 1932 issue, beginning on page 54, and I'll share some of it with you. In addressing her arrival in Hollywood, columnist Llewellyn Carroll writes, quote, "She suffered from no inferiority complex. Neither was she awed by the expensive homes in Beverly Hills with their sweep of green lawn, of flowers, of trees. Nor was she awed by the expensive cars, the swank and the poise or pose of the picture rich. But she was awed, indeed shocked, by the more personal, the bolder aspects of Hollywood. Unattached beauty, she discovered, was considered fair prey for men, from extras to stars to executives who liked to play. It made no difference if they were married. They played and were known to call it attending, quote, studio conferences. They played together, usually, and were familiar with each other's indiscretions. In the argot of the studio, this was cynically accepted as, quote, knowing where the body was buried. Many incapable minor executives held their jobs by being accomplices to the indiscretions of their superiors. Her first and hence most shattering disillusionment came one night shortly after her arrival in Hollywood. The studio for which she was working called her and requested her immediate presence. She assumed the request meant retakes for the picture in which she was working, and which was being rushed to completion. She went to the studio, but instead of being permitted to go on the set, she was ushered into an office. And there she recognized familiar executive faces. There were girls, too, young and yielding. Drinks, cigarettes, a Victrola. The amazing gathering were making merry, to say the least. Not being merry, Thelma turned on her heel. They stopped her and cajoled her to stay, to have a drink, to be a good fellow. Thelma refused. One word flared to another and stormed into melodramatic violence. But Thelma went home, shaken by the experience. Hundreds of girls believe that by being, quote, nice to executives, they will be rewarded with contracts. They have learned to their grief how little faith can be placed in nocturnal promises. Many who have disdained the, quote, "you be nice to me and I'll be nice to you" promises have learned to their sorrow how swift can be the revenge of the repulsed titan. Hollywood hath no fury like a director scorned. Once a girl is blacklisted, she cannot get a job at the larger studios. The blacklist is denied by the producers, and so secret are the meetings and so closely do they stand together that no victim has ever been able to assemble sufficient evidence to convict any Hollywood dictator. Yet Hollywood knows what it knows, and the blacklist ranks high in its fears. End quote. I did a bonus episode about the ugliness behind closed doors with Hollywood's casting couch, so that is available on Patreon if you'd like to join and learn more about it. It's not fun information, but it's important information. So, as you can see from this article, studio execs didn't blink at the idea of ruining a young woman's entire future if she dared to say no to him. Thelma Todd's budding career was made a little more difficult after she said no, actually a lot more difficult. But she was determined to make it through to the other side. And in the summer of 1928, she officially made the transition from silent films into sound. Not many actors and actresses made the cut. Careers were ended just like that. But Thelma was one of the lucky ones. She passed her sound test. Although the studio informed her that her career was safe through this transition, they also put a clause in her contract about her weight. She had gained about 15 pounds since arriving in town, all that good food she was dining on every night. She was not overweight at all. But for 1928 Hollywood, she was. And the gossip columns made sure to mention it often. Like this from a review for the movie Naughty Baby in Motion Picture News. Quote, "Thelma Todd displays her blonde loveliness, and there seems to be an awful lot of it. That girl better go into training to keep her weight in hand." End quote. Thelma left Paramount soon after. She became a free agent in January of 1929. Thelma's career took the turn that would direct her down the path that would become her biggest legacy in the spring of 1929, just a few months after leaving Paramount. She was just about to put her pen down on a contract with a British studio to make 4 films with them across the pond, when American film producer and studio head Hal Roach persuaded her to meet with him. Hal Roach was the man behind Our Gang and Laurel and Hardy. He produced wildly successful comedy shorts, and now he was interested in seeing what he could do with the sweet and funny Thelma Todd. If she was interested, that is. She was. On April 25th, 1929, 22-year-old Thelma Todd signed a 5-year contract with Hal Roach Studios. Thelma's first project was the short film Unaccustomed as We Are with Laurel and Hardy, one of the most famous comedy duos to ever live. They were hot, and they were really famous at this point. This film, the one Thelma Todd debuted in with the studio, was Laurel and Hardy's very first talking film. Thelma was put to work and appeared in several comedy shorts in her first few months at Hal Roach Studios, mostly paired up with Charlie Chase. She had found her place in the entertainment world. These comedy shorts were the perfect place for her, and audiences could not get enough of them. She did feature films for other studios during this time too. She was a busy girl. She dipped back into dramatic roles with other studios throughout her career, always wanting to keep that diverseness in her work. In fact, one of these feature films came with a bizarre publicity stunt. The movie was Corsair, directed by Roland West. He wanted to showcase Thelma Todd as a dramatic actress, and he wanted to do so with a brand new identity. Although she was fairly famous and well known all over by her name of Thelma Todd, he presented her as the star of his movie Corsair as actress Allison Lloyd. He publicly told reporters he wanted to change much more than her name. He wanted to, quote, change her personality and psychological outlook, end quote. Roland West was married to former silent film star Jewel Carmen. Both Roland West and Jewel Carmen would soon be key figures in the life of Thelma Todd. So, more on them later. 2 years into her time at Hal Roach Studios, in June of 1931, Thelma Todd was paired up with Zazu Pitts in Let's Do Things. Their comedic chemistry was undeniable, and the on-screen pairing was a huge delight to audiences. Hal Roach knew a good thing when he saw it, and he immediately made the two actresses regular partners, the female Laurel and Hardy. The two worked together for 2 years and 17 shorts. Zazu Pitts left Hal Roach Studios in May of 1933 when the studio refused to meet her high salary demands. They were willing to lose Zazu Pitts, but they knew they needed to find a new comedy partner for Thelma fast. And they found her in Patsy Kelly, and the new pair starred in 21 comedy shorts together. Thelma and Zazu remained friends, and Thelma also found a new good friend in her co-star Patsy Kelly. I did an episode on Patsy Kelly's life that is definitely worth checking out as well. Things were going great in Thelma Todd's career. She was nestled in safely at Hal Roach Studio making comedy shorts, and she was doing dramatic roles for other studios as she was able. It was important to her to keep her toes dipped on both sides, comedy and drama. I'm going to shift away from Thelma's career now, as I like to put more focus on our stars' personal lives when I'm able to. If you are interested in learning more in-depth details of Thelma's Hollywood career and her films, I highly recommend picking up the book I used as my primary source for this episode, The Ice Cream Blonde by Michelle Morgan. Thelma Todd kept her presence active in the Hollywood social scene. She was very beloved by gossip columnists and movie magazines. She was positive and funny. She hated gossip, but she was always willing to talk and always included a great zinger for them. And that made her a columnist and fan favorite. She dined out and socialized frequently, knowing by doing so her name and face would stay current in the magazines. It was good for business. For the most part, though, Thelma enjoyed a calm and quiet life. Her social life was mostly fabricated as a tool to boost her career. Don't get me wrong, she loved to have a good time. But in reality, Thelma would have much more preferred to stay home with a good book, or answer her fan mail, or play the piano, or spend time in the kitchen making delicious baked goods. From the moment Thelma Todd very first went under contract with Paramount back east when she was 19 years old, regular rumors would pop up about her love life. According to gossip columnists, she was engaged to a new man every few months. A lot of this stemmed from the fact that Thelma just always felt more comfortable in friendships with men than women. Yes, some of them were romantic partners, but some of the men on her arm were just good friends that she was out to have a good time with. She was briefly engaged to wealthy playboy Harvey Priester while in her early days at Hal Roach Studios. But ultimately, she knew it wasn't a sensible decision to marry him. It would lead to nothing but trouble and heartache. She knew he wasn't really the settling down type, and that he would be stepping out on the marriage immediately. Circling back to Roland West now. When Thelma began working with director Roland West on Corsair in 1931, sparks flew between the actress and the much older, married director. He was 21 years Thelma's senior. West's marriage to Jewel Carmen wasn't an easy one. She was reportedly troubled and unpredictable. But they were married. Either way, a romance blossomed between West and Thelma Todd. He must have had some special kind of charisma that drew the ladies in, because many people didn't have much good to say about his looks or personality. His nephew described him as a, quote, sinister, sneaky kind of guy, not well liked by most people. Actor William Bakewell called him a, quote, kind of odd guy. And author Michelle Morgan of Ice Cream Blonde described him like this, quote, he was a small man with a thinning hairline, gnarly features, and small, hooded eyes. His face often unshaven, his shirts tieless, he looked casual at best and scruffy at worst, end quote. With Roland West not willing to divorce his wife, Jewel, his relationship with Thelma Todd ended at the end of filming for Corsair. But it wasn't done forever. Although heartbroken, it was probably for the best, Thelma thought. She eventually wanted to get married and have children. She wanted to work in pictures for a few more years and then retire and live a typical life as a typical wife and mother. Thelma continued to date, but all of these relationships were kept pretty casual. She told one reporter that she'd only been in love once, and she alluded to the idea that the man was Roland West, although she never came out and publicly admitted to the relationship. And then her rebound heart met Pat DeSico, a man closely connected to the mob. He was handsome and charming, and Thelma really liked him. Unfortunately, on the other side of that charm was a sometimes terrifying temper. But Pat was Thelma's rebound man, the man who helped her forget about Roland West, and she fell too quickly and too deeply under his spell. Before she could realize there was another side to his charm, the two had eloped. In July of 1932, 26-year-old Thelma Todd became a married woman. The whirlwind romance had caused her to lose track of her goals of marrying a nice man after leaving show business. Instead, she married the charismatic Pat DeSico, something she would quickly come to regret. Pat DeSico was a controlling and possessive husband. He didn't really work, and Thelma worked a lot, and he really resented this. Now that they were married, he expected Thelma to leave her career behind and devote all of her energy to him. But she wasn't quite ready to do that yet. So instead, he just began to control her career. He controlled everything about her. He just needed to have control. Not long after they were married, Pat and Thelma were in a car accident that left Thelma really beat up. Pat was mostly uninjured in the crash, but Thelma sustained 3 broken ribs, a broken shoulder, and internal injuries. It was pretty serious. These injuries take a long time to recover from, so she was off of work for a while. Once she was strong again, she went straight back to Hal Roach Studios and back to work with her still-then partner, Zazu Pitts. Their popular partnership was in its last months at this point. Many people described Thelma Todd as the soul of Hal Roach Studios, the glue that held the place together. She cared deeply about everyone at the studio. She took the time to get to know everyone from the cameramen to the set designers to her fellow actors. She asked them about their families, and she helped them when they were in need. She was funny, and she was the life of the studio. She had everyone laughing all the time. She was silly and wholesome and real. Everyone at Hal Roach Studios loved Thelma Todd. Patsy Kelly actually almost left after their first short together. Not because of Thelma Todd, but because she was a stage actress and she just didn't love the demands of filming. And some of the comedy required of her in these shorts was very physically demanding. But her new friend Thelma convinced her to give it another try. She helped Patsy through it, and she helped her through so much more. Thelma was a good friend. In the fall of 1933, just over a year after becoming Mrs. Pascal Pat DeSico, Thelma Todd visited her lawyer to revise her will. The major revision said the following, quote, "I give and bequeath to my husband, Pascal DeSico, the sum of $1 in cash," end quote. Pat DeSico was out of the will. Big trouble in paradise. They were fighting, and the fights were getting increasingly nasty. Thelma tried to keep up a positive image of her marriage in the press, but many could see the ice in their eyes when they were out together. It hit a breaking point in February of 1934 after a particularly terrible fight. Thelma had had enough. She marched right into her lawyer's office and filed for divorce. The marriage was over less than 2 years after it began. 3 years later, DeSico was involved in the brutal beating death of comedian Ted Healy outside of the Trocadero. He went on to marry 2 more times. His next wife was Gloria Vanderbilt. As far as Thelma Todd, after her divorce, she was once again a free woman. She felt like she could breathe again. This is where I'm going to leave off for this week. When we join together again, I will share the rest of Thelma Todd's story with you. Sadly, it's not a long life, but there is a lot to say about it. It's going to be a good one, so please tune back in next week for the conclusion of this story. Before I say goodbye, I would love to share a review of the week with you. This one is really great. It's from great friend of the show, Dee Brady, on Spotify. In reference to the Boris Karloff episode where I talked about the process of transforming him into the monster of Frankenstein, she said, "I was a makeup artist for years. The technique in these old movies is still very much used today. Spirit gum and cotton are the best for changing a face shape that can still move. Nowadays, they make several at once so the time is reduced each day, and the removal is less harsh than before. These classic cinema films paved the way for prosthetics and how to create and use them on film. Love that you covered that part." This is awesome. I love having this real-life insight. And I love that those first techniques are still being used today. I would have made a pretty rotten Frankenstein, though. I'm pretty careful about what I put on my skin. And I haven't worn Halloween makeup in years, but every time I did, I just felt like I needed to scratch my face the whole time. It actually gives me chills just thinking about it. I bet that was a long 40 days of filming for Boris Karloff. Please let us know if you have any more behind-the-scenes info as a makeup artist. I would love to hear it. Love it. Thank you so much, as always. Please give the show a follow where you listen to your podcast so you don't miss any new episodes. And follow the show on Facebook and Instagram as well. And if you are interested in learning about the awesome bonus content available, visit patreon.com/Stars of the Golden Age podcast to see the options available. And I will be forever grateful to you for supporting the show. Thanks, guys. Don't forget to join me again here next week for the rest of our story. For now, reach for the positive in every day, be kind to everyone you encounter, and have a great rest of your week. My primary source for this episode was a book titled The Ice Cream Blonde, The Whirlwind Life and Mysterious Death of Screwball, Thelma Todd by Michelle Morgan. I also used an article from PBS by Hadley Meares from October 8th, 2014, and IMDB.
If you're a podcast host, listen up, this one's for you. My name is Allie Jackson. I'm the host of Finding Mr. Height, a dating and relationship podcast that I've been doing for 4 years now, sharing my positive and practical approach to dating that's built on my own life experience. And I wanted to share another experience that I've had, my secret behind monetizing my show. It's called Red Circle, and I was just telling my colleague about how much I love their platform. With Red Circle, not only am I getting a seamless hosting experience, but I also love the support I receive in ad sales. It's not just typical ad sales either. It's targeted opportunities based on my show and my life. And the platform is super simple. You just set your preferences and Red Circle matches you with sponsors that align with your show. You can vet every opportunity and their platform gives you great analytics. More recently too, my Red Circle team has brought me opportunities outside of my podcast on social media to really augment the podcast partnerships, bring them full circle. I just can't recommend them enough. If you want to give it a try, go to redcircle.com to get your free trial. That's redcircle.com for a free trial.